I'd like to welcome Will Palmer, the CEO of Movio, who's going to talk about some new research and what his company does. Will.
Thank you. So the first thing we want to address, if it's going to change, hopefully it doesn't change twice now, is the box office challenge. So we discussed it a little bit in the panel that just came up earlier on, that with huge success of Jurassic World and Avengers Age of Ultron, you would have thought 2015 would have been the biggest year in blockbuster history, and most people thought it was going to be. Yet it's only up 6% on 2014 and 1% on 2013. So this suggests that successful, big-budget, tentpole films are not sufficient for driving the increase in the overall movie-going rates. And it does raise a few questions. Are there groups of moviegoers that attend the cinema regularly that avoid tentpoles? If so, what does this group look like? And what types of content do they actually prefer? And would it make sense to move resources in producing, distributing, and marketing content to these groups? So, how did we address this? Well, at Movio, what we did is we decided to build, and to better understand the moviegoer preferences, we decided to pull our data science team together and build an audience-based network of movies released since January 1, 2014. So 310 movies in all were analysed. The data was captured from a normalised sample of 1 million American moviegoers. So it was a huge sample to be able to look at. It covered every state in America and every demographic. Each dot represents a specific title, and the size of each dot represents the size of the relevant audiences. Each movie is connected to 2 movies with the most similar audiences. That's a bit confusing, that bit. And then using Movio Media's proprietary similarity ratings algorithm, we were able to look at the relationships between moviegoers and the films that they watch. Then applying a clustering algorithm, the audience was segmented into the following 10 clusters. So you can see the first one there being tentpole. That's your Jurassic World and Avengers. We've called this category tough action. If it's going to come up. Here we are, tough action. And that's things like American Sniper and Fury, animation, horror, Bollywood, your comedies, your popular indies, which are things like Grand Budapest and Birdman, art house, and drama and faith-based films. Interestingly, horror fans, you should be able to see on the right-hand side, there is the blue sector on the right there, are not actually connected to the balance of the film-going audience, which suggests that the horror cluster actually creates incremental box office. So we've done a lot of study on this, and it looks like horror fans only watch horror, so they're not cannibalizing other ticket sales. So studios with a slate of horror films will obviously be incrementally building the growth of their total box. Unsurprisingly, the most popular cluster was tentpoles, with moviegoers in this cluster watching tentpole films 37% of the time. There's all our clusters there. So, who doesn't go to Blockbusters? To determine this, we looked at moviegoers least likely to watch tentpole releases, and we found 2 interesting subclusters. The first are dramas appealing to female baby boomers. There were 23 movies in all that fit the profile here and included titles such as The 100-Foot Journey and Woman in Gold. The second was comedies appealing to millennial women. So there were 12 movies in all here and included films like Trainwreck and Spy. So we take a first look at the first group. We've pulled out some interesting data points that relate to them. So we're going to look at the dramas appealing to female baby boomers first. Interestingly, this makes up 13% of the total film-going audience. They have an average age of 55, 59% female. They go to the movies 11.6 times a year, so these are amongst the most avid of filmgoers. And interestingly, 54% of the time they attend the movies before 5 o'clock, which helps answer a major problem in the cinema business, which is what do you do with all the distressed inventory that exists in a cinema during the day. To create some form of benchmark, we adopted a simple box office revenue to film budget ratio, which we've called the gross to box ratio. And we accept that it doesn't include marketing and other related costs, but it does give some idea of financial performance. The ratio for each of the 23 films were calculated, and then they were averaged to provide a singular ratio. We'll use this methodology throughout the presentation so you can get an idea of the performance of different films. And in this indication, you can see that this is a pretty healthy gross to budget ratio of 4.1. The second group are comedies appealing to millennial women. So again, another 13% of the population fit into this bracket. Average age in this group is 38, and remember, we can't capture data on people under the age of 14. So it is definitely a younger sector that is in there. They go to the movies almost once a month as well, and unlike the other group, they like to go to the films in the evenings. 34% go before 5 p.m. And when we looked at the performance of this group, and we looked at the gross to budget ratio on this one, the number came out at 6.3. So they were a pretty lucrative audience. So both of these clusters of movies have common characteristics. They appeal to an audience that is not attracted to traditional tentpole films. They attract an audience that is significant. Both of these sectors have 13% of the total unique movie-going audience. And they're actually relatively profitable when compared to other films. They also appeal to very different audiences. One older and far more likely to see movies during the day. One younger and far more likely to go to movies at night. So you can optimize those two things together. Both audiences are avid filmgoers, and both are predominantly women. So, should studios target women? Absolutely, particularly when you consider the following additional facts. The first of which, 60% of all cinema loyalty card holders are female. Loyalty accounts directly for 25% of the admissions in North America, and an estimated 47% indirectly when you factor in the people that loyalty card holders take with them to the movies. So a huge percentage of overall box office is running through some form of loyalty program. The second key stat is that 57% of the animated audience is female, suggesting our children are being introduced to the cinema predominantly by women, which means the future film goers are being introduced in the same way. Our final step was to determine the financial viability of the female-focused strategy. To do this, we looked at films with a gender bias over 60%. So they needed to have watched, more than 60% of the audience needed to be one of the two genders. And it resulted in two different groups coming out. There were two groups, one group of 45 male-dominated films and one group of 40 female-dominated films. This revealed the following insight. Although the male-dominated films had an average worldwide gross twice as large as that of the female-dominated films, when you apply our ratio, there was a 122% higher gross-to-budget ratio for the female-dominated films, suggesting that they're more profitable. This trend is also true when you consider blockbusters, with the male-focused superhero films averaging a global gross-to-budget ratio of 2.9, yet the female ones, if you factor in things like The Hunger Games, coming in with a budget ratio of 4.4. So once again, 52% higher when you're using those terms. So this suggests that a shift in focus towards producing, distributing, and marketing films to women could pay off, not only in incremental box office, but in blockbuster returns as well. So perhaps the answer to breaking box office records is as simple as knowing what women want. So for more on that, we've put together a white paper. This was just a brief introduction into it. The white paper is available on that QR code. I actually have business cards with that code on it if you require it. Or alternatively, you can go to movio.co/TheGrill, and the full documentation is there if you'd like to read through it. Any questions? One down the end there.
It's puzzling to me how quickly the production side of the motion picture industry adopted digital and took ownership of digital and integrated digital, and how slow the marketing side of movies, which I think are still marketed closer to the way they were in the 1970s, than in any way relevant to being on platforms where people can actually transact and buy tickets. They're still spending, what is it, probably 80% of the money on television, on which you can't buy a ticket and you can basically just brand. How do you explain that, and what sort of take-up are you getting at the studios as being willing to either experiment or fully commit to digital marketing?
It's a great question. Look, it's still slow. The world still lives in an impressions place where it's all about the number of eyeballs that see my trailer or my advertising or my marketing. And that's challenging to get through, but I would say that there has been a shift in the attitudes across all of the studios towards knowing they need to be more efficient in their marketing and be more calculated and targeted in their efforts to reach the consumer. And so we have seen a movement across all of the major studios to start looking at data more seriously, and we are working with all bar one of the majors at this stage. So I think that probably speaks volumes to they are changing. I think one of the challenges is that you need to have large scale to be able to launch some of these films, and there just isn't that volume of data out there yet to get the scale that they can achieve with television yet. But when there is, I think it will switch to digital.
Okay, thank you so much, Will. He, again, is going to be at lunch. You can seek him out and come ask him more questions. Thank you.